Hey, good morning. Welcome to Open Mics with Dr. Stites. It's Wednesday, January the 18th. It's warm outside. I'm Dr. Steve Stites, Chief Medical Officer at the University of Kansas Health System. How many of us got one of those fitness trackers for Christmas? Just in time for that New Year's resolution to start walking every day. How many of those trackers are still in the box? Today we look at why you're going to want to strap that device on your wrist and hit the streets. Find out why 10,000 steps is the magic number you should be racking up on that tracker. Join us here in the Dolph Simons Jr. Family Broadcast Studio is Dr. Sandra Billinger. Did I get it right? Yeah.
You did.
Professor of Neurology at the KU School of Medicine, who studies exercise, brain health, and stroke recovery. Also with us is Dr. Lauren Tomey.
Yep.
I'm rocking it this morning. Associate Professor for the Division of Physical Activity and Weight Management in the Department of Internal Medicine and a registered dietitian here at the Med Center. And joining us live from the Kermeyer Fitness Center on our campus is Dr. John Jakizik. I think I got it right. How close was I? Pretty good? Awesome.
That was
All right.
very good. Very good.
Excellent. Also with the Division of Physical Activity and Weight Management in the Department of Internal Medicine at the KU School of Medicine. And, of course, our very own Dr. Dana Hawkinson, I will never say his full name again, Hawkeye, will join to give us our latest COVID count. We're hoping for a few better numbers, both locally and maybe even nationally. Thank you all for being with us this morning. We always love getting questions from our viewers. They're a great part of this program. Get yours sent in to us now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and the Medical News Network. You find those links right here on your screen. And, of course, our very own Jessica Lovell will join us a little later with your questions. Okay, so it became conventional wisdom in many fitness circles a few years ago that we should all try to take 10,000 steps a day. Look, I do it on my Apple Watch. I track it. I track it on my phone. By the way, the Fitbit always gave me more steps than my Apple Watch. It underestimated by 15%. I would wear two of them all at once so I could see which one I had the most steps on, make myself feel better. Okay, but we wondered, because why was it actually 10,000? What, in fact, is the right number? Well, it turns out that, yes, 10,000 looks like it is the right number according to some new research. A study in JAMA Neurology found that walking about 10,000 steps a day was linked to less cardiovascular disease, stroke, and heart failure, plus decreasing your risk of 13 types of cancer and reducing the risk of dementia. If you know me, that's something I really need to work on. So taking 10,000 steps is about the same as walking 4 or 5 miles, depending on your stride, of course. Dr. Jakizik, while you did not participate directly in this study, you've been part of similar research. These findings must come as no surprise to you. Tell us your thoughts on the benefits of 10,000 steps, and tell me why it's 10,000 steps and not 8,000. Because on a personal level, I just want to know, I hit 8,000 a lot more than I hit 10. I want to know that I'm okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the question. And there's a fair amount of evidence. This goes back decades now that we've been learning about the benefits of walking and at this level of activity. And not only are we getting the research to kind of support that this number that we came up with a little bit arbitrarily a couple of decades ago actually supports this. And I think the one thing that's very, very important is that 10,000 seems to be the optimal number. If we could get to 10,000, we're going to have all these health benefits kind of at a very optimal level. However, you mentioned that you get 8,000 steps. And I think that for our viewers, we want to be cautious and say, if you don't get 10,000, that doesn't mean you're not getting benefit. It's almost a linear relationship that the more you do, the more health benefits you start to get. But if you can get to 10,000, you're going to actually maximize the health benefits across the vast majority of the health parameters that we're talking about. So 10,000 is definitely important, but you definitely get benefits at 6,000, 8,000, 9,000, all the way up to 10,000, even more than that.
See, I knew I was going to like you for that answer. That's perfect. What happens if you go to 12 and 14 or 20,000? Does it get even better?
Well, it depends on the outcome. I think from a health perspective, you start to get maybe a little bit more benefit, but it starts to flatten out. And what you really start to then see is, fitness benefits, that, you just have more endurance. But it doesn't necessarily mean that your risk of cardiovascular disease, cancer, neurological concerns, and so on are actually reducing even more. You kind of hit a plateau probably between about 10 and 12,000 steps a day.
Okay, well that's still a good number, and you have to kind of work at it. You have to really focus. Say, I'm going to do that. You can't park your car at the grocery store as close as you want. Maybe you should park a little further away. All these little tricks you can do, right? So Dr. Billinger, I didn't say it right. Did I say it right that time? Billinger.
You did.
Yes. Billinger. Okay.
Yes, you did.
What is it about pumping blood through our system when walking that is so beneficial to us? Why does this work?
Yeah, so it's really important when we're walking. And by the way, coming over here, I already got 2,000 steps in. So walking back to my office.
Are you at Landon?
I'm at Hemingway.
Okay, so you walk back and forth. That's 2,000 steps.
Yeah, so I'm going to have 4,000 in. So again, finding those ways, like you said, to try to get our steps in is always a great opportunity. So when our heart pumps, the obvious one is that we're going to get oxygen-rich blood to all of our muscles and our organs and our heart, and so that's really important for health and benefits. But the heart is a muscle, and it likes exercise just like the muscles in our leg or our arms, and so there's actually benefits. When you walk and your heart rate goes up, it actually causes your vessels to stretch and give and flex. And when we do that regularly at rest, that helps our blood pressure actually go down. And so that's one of the benefits. But when our blood circulates, we get a lot of other nutrients and hormones and everything that gets circulated through our body. And so all of that has definitely a benefit with just even walking.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So this also apparently helps the brain. Tell us about the benefits to the brain as well.
Yeah, so we know, again, with exercise, we know that blood flow does go up, even with walking. And so the vessels in the brain really benefit from that oxygen. And then the neurons, which are specialized cells in the brain, those actually need oxygen to really survive and thrive. And so if you look at this picture that's popped up on the screen, this was a study that we did a few years back. And so if you look to the right of the dotted line where it says exercise onset, this is your brain blood flow at rest. So you can see where those levels are. The open circles that say low intensity, this is actually equivalent to probably what I did just walking over here. Okay. The blood flow in our brain actually goes up with exercise, and we were actually the first in the world to actually characterize this in a continuous way. We just wanted to be able to tell people how much does your brain blood flow go up with exercise. It's a lot easier to measure it in the heart, by the way. Mm-hmm. And then the darker circles that were on the screen are moderate intensity. So this would be like brisk walking, climbing the stairs. So you can see that there's just a little bit added benefit to that moderate intensity.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable, the increase there. What percent increase is that from baseline?
It's for the low intensity, it's about 15%, and then you get a bigger bump to about 20%. We actually did another study where we went just a little bit higher to the upper threshold of that moderate intensity, and what we found was that it went up a little bit higher than that. But there's a ceiling effect to how high that can go. But so I always tell people in the community, just walking around and doing normal is way better than just sitting there and resting.
You bet. And so does that help us with Alzheimer's?
It actually does. We don't have evidence, 100% proof in how exercise, as far as the dose goes, how much, how often, how hard should we work. We're still answering those questions, and it's really a ripe field for discovery at this time. But there is evidence that shows that people who are active across their lifetime have a reduced risk for dementia and Alzheimer's and like vascular dementia. So. Yes.
So it really does help us a lot, and so the more exercise, the better then. Huh?
Yeah.
Do we have to hit this? Do we have to do it every day of the week, or like 5 days a week? Some people say 3 days a week. What's the number of days a week we have to hit this?
For general walking, most of the guidelines say you should be active every day of the week. Okay. So, but if you're going to do structured exercise, you need 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity exercise, or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity.
And does that get me the same benefit as 10,000 steps a day?
Would probably get you a little more benefit. Just there was some evidence in that article you were talking about that was in JAMA and JAMA Neurology that showed increasing in intensity and duration definitely had some benefits.
All right, so I can do a lot of intense exercise. I can walk a lot every day. They're both going to help me a lot, and if I do them together, Is that like the best thing ever?
That is the best.
The best thing ever. All right, Dr. Tomey, tell us about the research underway at the medical center involving exercise and metabolism, because I suppose that's like important too, or something. And diet.
Well, yeah, but if we're really just even looking at like exercise and metabolism and brain health, there's currently over 15 National Institute of Health funded studies occurring at the university right now, and then a number of pilots.
At this university?
Yes, at our
Holy
University
cow.
of Kansas Medical
It's like
Center.
you guys are doing this or something.
I know. We're actually becoming one of the like leading fields in exercise science and health, which is really great that it's happening right here. And so there's all sorts of research being conducted from youth, adults, older adults, individuals with Alzheimer's disease, even there's research in exercise in people with Down syndrome and other intellectual disabilities happening. So, for example, kind of getting into the intensity deal that Dr. Bellinger was talking about, Dr. Jill Morris, over in combination with Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, is actually doing a study looking at different intensities of exercise and how that affects brain health, metabolism in people, older adults with or without Alzheimer's disease. So we can start to really look at, does intensity affect the development of Alzheimer's disease, and how does that affect kind of our metabolism and those associations.
So this walking and exercise outside, does all that impact our weight, or is it more diet, or what do we have to do to make sure we maintain the right weight too?
So, you know, that's a really interesting question. So one of the benefits of exercise we know is more about weight maintenance rather than weight loss. And so there's actually a study our research team did, led by Dr. Joseph Donnelly, in which we looked at 3 different levels of exercise to see which level was best for weight loss maintenance. So if you lose weight, you know, does a certain exercise prevent you from gaining weight back? And our findings were that prescribing individuals to walk 225 minutes, or to do 225 minutes of exercise per week, led to the least amount of weight regain after weight loss.
Okay.
However, when we're also looking at this, we know exercise is really important outside of diet, outside of nutrition. A lot of times I think people just put them all in this package, like I have to eat healthier, exercise, and lose weight if I want to be healthy. And that's not really the case at all. We know exercise alone has so many health benefits. So we've already talked about some of those, that we see that when you increase your exercise, you lower your blood pressure, you lower your low density or your LDL, which is your bad cholesterol. You increase your HDL, which is your good cholesterol. We see benefits with insulin resistance and decreased rates of diabetes. We also see benefits in terms of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, different cancers, even Alzheimer's disease. Additionally, we have lots of other benefits. So there's improved quality of life. There's decreased rates of depression, and even improved sleep. And that's all, again, with just exercise.
That's a big deal. So it's like you guys are trying to tell us we should exercise or something on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
Or a pretty regular basis. So does this apply? I warned you I was going to ask you about this. Guys, does this apply to my cat as well? Should my cat be exercising on a regular basis?
So believe it or not, I think they sell fitness trackers for pets now that you can put on their collars, so you can kind of figure out like what they do during the day, and then, you know, you can get one of those cams and spy on them.
Yeah.
So if you really are concerned about your cat, you can probably start looking at it. I don't think there's a lot of research out there though, looking
that's
at
not part of
steps
what
per
you're
day.
looking at here?
Yeah, no.
Okay, fine.
But I would say having your favorite pet be active, take them on walks with you outside, because, you know, all the good things that we're talking about here for you actually apply to the
it's
pets.
got to apply to everybody. And
But I don't know about birds.
Okay.
I don't know about, like, you know, like the parakeets. I know. So I'm not real sure.
All right, Dr. Jakisik, a lot of us are couch potatoes, and I don't think of myself as a couch potato. I try to get out and work out a lot, but the thought of walking 10,000 steps a day could be overwhelming. How do you work up to that? And I see you behind you is all that exercise equipment, which is sort of like the big thought, right? Can I master all this equipment? What's going to happen to me? How do I go to a gym? How do we get people started?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to start talking about is, we're talking about physical activity and we're not talking about exercise. Exercise kind of is a taboo kind of word for a lot of people. They go back to their days of, oh, I got to sweat and I got to do all this work and I don't like it and I hate it, versus, you know, thinking about activity in a more broad sense is the first place to start. And that goes back to my thoughts around 10,000 steps. It's not, we shouldn't be talking to people about what the ultimate goal is. We should be talking about how people are right now. So if a person, for example, the average person in America probably gets about 3,000 or 4,000 steps a day. How do we build on that 3,000 or 4,000 steps a day to get them to 5,000 steps a day? Once we get to 5,000 steps, how do we go to 6,000? So it's about all the things. For some people, that's going to be, getting a treadmill and walking on it. For other people, it's going to be, like what happened this morning, with Dr. Billinger, walking from my office over to another place as opposed to taking a shuttle or opposed to, riding the escalator and things. How do we think about building slow little pieces? So I like to actually think about having people say, okay, I'm at 4,000 steps a day. What can I do today to get to 4,500 steps a day? And when you start to think about 4,500 steps a day, that's just adding 5 more minutes of walking throughout that day. And when you start to talk to patients and the public about that, they go, oh, I can add 5 more minutes of walking today. And then once you get to that, you do another thing. We had an interesting study we did 20 years ago where we actually, took the traditional go out and walk 30, 40 minutes at a time and told people, don't do that anymore. Go out and do 10 minutes at a time. So we were one of the first groups to talk about 10-minute bouts done multiple times a day. And when we got people to go out and take a 10-minute walk, they told us it was easier for them to do. And when they went out and did 10 minutes, they ultimately ended up walking 17 minutes. Because it's about having people feel like they can do something as opposed to giving them a goal that seems so unachievable for them. And I think this is variable from person to person. And that's what the new physical activity guidelines in 2018 came out with and talked about. And I was part of that advisory group for the Department of Health and Human Services, where it's about how do we build on activity and get people to start doing a little more and then a little more and a little more, as opposed to saying, this is the goal, this is what you should be doing. And so I think it's a progression for most people, not like saying, here's what you need to do starting today.
Yeah, I think that progression is a big deal, and just trying to get people motivated to go do that. I know I talk to my patients a lot about that, about trying to make sure that we do it. And you just got to get forward motion, right? Just get started a little forward motion, and then you can build on that over time. Dr. Billinger, all is not lost if we can't quite hit that. No, please go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think the one thing that we can say is I think we can say 2 things to our patients. One is our goal should be to sit less and move more. Sit less and move more. And when you move, as often as you can, try to walk as if you're going to be late for a meeting. And I think those 2 messages resonate with patients. They understand what sitting and moving mean, and they understand what it would take to walk as if I was going to be late for something. And if we can get them to just understand how simple this can be, I feel like that's actually going to help to have people engage in more and more and more activity and really believe like they can work this into their lifestyles.
So, Dr. Jakisik, I bet the people out there that own the stock in Zoom are concerned about your viewpoint here because, So let me ask you, is there a real effect here from Zoom and the pandemic? Have people moved less because of Zoom?
I don't know if they've moved less with Zoom, but I would say that, for those of us that are sitting at our desk already, I think, we were already sedentary. But I will say I didn't walk. I walk across campus quite a bit and from the research building that I'm in. So I think my step count went down from going to meetings in a physical space to being at Zoom. I don't know how Dr. Jakisik or Dr. Tomey feel.
Hey, Zoom saved our physical activity research. So we actually, a lot of the research we're doing in our department and I'm doing actually focuses on remotely delivered exercise. So that way we can target people living in rural Kansas and other barriers. And so Zoom and everyone becoming more familiar with Zoom really helped kind of a new way of getting other people to exercise. So we could do these Zoom remote sessions and kind of target people, especially during the pandemic, who had no other options and couldn't even go to a gym. So while Zoom might have hurt us because now we're taking more meetings like from our computer rather than walking across campus, Zoom can also help because now it's a way to get underserved populations group physical activity.
So is the stock at net zero? Is that,
I don't know. I think maybe it is. I'm not sure. I'm all confused again. Buy, sell. I never could get that right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Billinger, if all is not lost, and we talked a little bit about at 10,000 steps, we'll get 4, 5, 6. What do you think is like the lower number? What's the lower number? Is it because sometimes those curves kind of start sort of flat, then you get all the benefit, and then we talk about how it can plateau off. What's the lower number that you can probably get to get a bunch of benefit, and then what's happening?
I think spinning off what Dr. Jakisik said, I think the message for sit less, move more is such an important one to think about because anything that you can add into somebody's day that is sedentary is very beneficial. The JAMA neurology paper that came out showed that for individuals who even got 3,800 steps per day, there was a 25% reduction in dementia onset. And so I think it's really important to think about anything is better than nothing and try to move more. But for people who might have questions in the audience about, well, you know, maybe I have a disability or I use a wheelchair for being out in the community, what can I do? And again, I would just emphasize that moving around is as much as you can is really important. If you start at 1,000 steps, you know, that's fine, start there, and then try to move forward with as much as you can. And even just getting out of your chair and standing up, there's some benefit to that as well. So again, I do want people to feel like all is not lost, and that you know, anything you do and wherever you start from is okay. Just try to increase those steps per day as you can. Yeah.
That is amazing. It is a great story, and I love this forward motion thing. So Dr. Tomey, what's the role of exercise in healthy aging?
Sure. Well, it's kind of two parts. You know, as Dr. Billinger has really stated, that we've seen some research that shows that exercise is associated with a decreased risk of Alzheimer's disease. So actually, there was another study published in JAMA last summer that showed that physical inactivity or lack of exercise was the second greatest preventable risk factor for Alzheimer's disease, contributing to about 14% of all Alzheimer's disease cases in the nation. So that's a huge number and really showing how important physical activity is. But also when I think about like healthy aging, I think about wanting people to be able to live independently as long as possible. And exercise is really key to that. So outside of some of the benefits we've already talked about, we know that exercise helps prevent fall risk, helps prevent hip fracture and osteoporosis, helps increase our ability to do activities of daily living like showering, changing ourselves. All of these are things that will help, as we age, keep us living independently longer. And for those individuals who maybe aren't able to live independently or need additional care, we also know that exercise is really important and it can decrease caregiver stress, caregiver burden, and really allow for a greater quality of care. So I hate to say this, but really exercise is the key to healthy aging from the time we're born all the way until older adulthood.
Yeah, that sounds like it's such a pivotal role in our lives, and I suspect if we thought about it from more of a evolutionary perspective, man was always moving around and walking a lot to do things.
Yeah.
We probably didn't sit around and look at a Zoom screen all day long.
Yeah. There's this great physician philosopher that made a comment about you're only as healthy as your arteries are. No, you age as well as your arteries do, or something like that.
Makes sense. Yeah. The better you treat your arteries, the better they'll treat you. Dr. Jakizik, you were quoted in a recent KU Med Center news release as saying it would, if we could put physical activity into a pill, it would likely be the most powerful medication we would have across a variety of health conditions. Talk to us about what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, if you just look at the number of health conditions that physical activity can impact, it's broad. And in the 2018 physical activity guidelines, we expanded the benefits, the areas of benefit, you know, by a number of conditions. And so almost every health condition can either be prevented or can actually be helped to be treated by including physical activity. And I don't know if there's any other medication out there on the market that can actually do that across all these health conditions. So no matter what else a physician is prescribing for a patient to help, and I believe, you know, there are great medicines out there, there's other treatments, activity should be always a part of that, because it can either prevent you from needing to take the medication, or it can actually help to enhance the treatment that you're already getting. And it goes across the lifespan, across all these health conditions. And I just want to go back to one little quick thing around like how much more should people start thinking about. And there was a great study that was out a number of years ago called the Navigator study. And what they found was just adding an extra 2,000 steps per day was really where you started to see the significant health benefits. And if you start to think about that, that's like taking a 5-minute walk 4 times a day. Most patients can do that. Getting up and moving 1 more minute 20 times today. That's something that most patients can do, most people can do. So just thinking about how can I get an extra 1,000 to 2,000 steps a day would really probably start to have this benefit. But we're only now, you know, we know that activity is good for all of us. We're only now starting to do studies to actually understand the molecular underpinnings of why that is. And you know, we're starting now to understand, you know, what are the signals that we're seeing? How are these cross signals happening across tissues and organs and things? And there's a national major study going on across the country, which we're peripherally involved with, called the Molecular Transducers of Physical Activity Consortium study. And they're trying to delve in and try to understand all this. So activity is really good, but we still have a lot more work to do to try to understand why it's so good for us the way I think it is, in terms of it being the super pill that I think we all were looking for.
Well, that'd be awesome. Now, we're going to turn to Dr. Billinger, or sorry, to Dr. Hawk in just a moment. But here's my most important question of the day: when I get on the bike, I spin and I stick the thing on my ankle. Do I get a step for every time I rotate my pedals?
You know, I tried to look at that once. I'm not sure it's a perfect one-to-one match.
No, you said no?
So you can't,
really?
Yeah.
No.
Get on a stepping device.
Step trackers are terrible about picking up any exercise, like on a bike, on an elliptical machine, even like swimming. And so that's one of the things, like with step trackers, people get so kind of obsessive about that 10,000 steps, but a lot of the activities we can do, they don't pick it up. And so people feel discouraged, or like, I'm not getting my 10,000 steps, even if they went on a 30-minute bike ride, or got on the elliptical machine, or did something. So it's really important to not only think about steps, but also think about minutes of physical activity. And I know you have an Apple Watch there, and so that's why I like those, because they will actually show your minutes. As well as your steps, so that way you have two different ways of looking at things.
And then if it monitors your heart rate, you get that too to see if your heart rate goes up. So
your intensity, your calorie burn. I think your Apple Watch there does it all.
It does. I like it too. All right, let's time to check in here with Dr. Dana Hawkinson, Medical Director of Infection Prevention and Control. Doc Hawk.
COVID count.
How are we doing?
Hi. Yeah, in the hospital right now, we have 27 active patients. Of those, 6 are in the ICU, 4 on the ventilator, 60 total. But overall, we have seen the numbers of active infections in our hospital decrease in the last 10 days or so. So that is a good sign.
That's great.
Cases nationwide, what we can detect, what have been reported, maybe seem to be decreasing as well. Same with hospitalizations, but death are still up there. However, we know that deaths do trail infections and hospitalizations by 3 to 4 weeks. And we know that these past 8 weeks or so, we've had quite a significant amount of viral circulation in the community and in the nation.
And we've seen hospitalizations over the 7-day average drop 25% nationally. So that's a really good indication. But as you look around the country right now, I think the XBB variant is sort of the big deal. So new year, new variant, a lot of it out there. Talk to us about the XBB, which by the way sounds like some version of Xbox, even though it's not.
Yeah, well, XBB is a recombination of actually 2 Omicron sublineages. So basically it's a great-grandchild of Omicron, essentially. We are seeing those numbers increase. Now there are caveats to this, because we know overall surveillance has gone down around the nation, but around the world. But for the best data that we have, the XBB variant does seem to be the one that is starting to predominate, if it's not predominant already. But I think the thing that we need to understand is that although we can't use those monoclonal antibodies anymore for treatment, we can't use Evusheld to help protect, we still have very good activity of the antivirals, most notably Paxlovid and Remdesivir, and also Molnupiravir. So we still do have that going for us. We also do know and understand the current vaccines, when you are updated, just as you said, continue to reduce your risk of hospitalization, but also severe disease manyfold. So it is important to be up to date with those vaccines, especially if you are in those higher risk categories, i.e. the elderly, if you have immunosuppression, if you have other comorbid conditions as well. But right now there are no data signals to support that this variant is more severe than what we have seen most recently as well.
Yeah, everything I'm reading is that it's clearly no more severe, maybe a little less severe, but it's hard to know if that's because of the population as a whole, and a lot of people have been vaccinated and have been infected, or both, or one or the other.
Yeah.
And so I think the whole thing's kind of a funny milieu right now. It's a little hard to read, but what we can depend upon is hospitalizations and the demographics of who's going into the ICU, who's dying. And you know, for a while we had young, healthy people dying from COVID, and now really it's people with severe chronic disease, otherwise immunocompromised, who are dying from COVID. So it's a different kind of outcome than what we saw earlier in the pandemic.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, we still hear people saying, well, you were in the hospital, maybe not because of COVID, but you had COVID or with COVID. But we should point out that here at our health system, we are only checking the people who are symptomatic. So we are not testing everybody that comes into the hospital. We are only testing people who are symptomatic. So I think our numbers tend to be a little bit more consistent with those people with active infections actually who are here because of COVID.
Yep, exactly. So another headline we want to talk a little bit about comes from the medical journal BMJ, British Medical Journal.
Yeah.
A new study shows that long COVID symptoms ease for most people within a year. Now, that's good news.
Yeah. That is good news. It is one piece of data. You know, we can still understand that people may suffer even longer, but that is good news in the fact that we can see that at least a large proportion, those long COVID symptoms will dissipate, but they also showed that those that were vaccinated had a less risk of those long COVID symptoms as well.
Yeah, so vaccination helps, taking good care of yourself helps, and I bet exercise helps reducing the impact of infection because you just start with a healthier cardiovascular system. For those of us who've worked in the ICU and have treated many patients with critical illness, I'll tell you, the folks who exercise, they don't end up in the ICU very often. It's a different population of patients. It's folks who are less healthy that end up being critically ill from lots of diseases. So, okay, well, let's see first of all if there's any reporter questions out there today. Not hearing any? All right, Jess, I bet we have a few questions from our viewers.
We do, and some really good ones coming in this morning. Erica wants to know, what can I do in a wheelchair?
Oh, excellent question.
To mimic those steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the question would be, is the person mobile at all? If they have an ability to walk with somebody, maybe they have an assistive device and have somebody help them, stand beside them to get those steps in. If they are unable to, do that, what they can do, again, can they stand up, go next to a counter, and then march in place? Those are some things that I've told, people with stroke or people with disabilities, a way to get their steps in.
But if you just can't move your legs, and really the arm action, you're still going to get, the beneficial effects arise from taking not just the fact you're using your legs, but from the effects on your veins and arteries. And I think maybe really just if you can roll the wheelchair, that's got to be helpful.
There's some also really encouraging new research happening even at the University of Kansas that they're showing that high intensity interval training for people in wheelchairs can be really beneficial. So even doing things we might not think about, but even if you're chair bound, being able to get on the ground, work on push-ups, work on sit-ups, work on just taking weights and throwing them. They're activities that maybe look a little bit more like resistance training, but they can still get your heart rate up. And we're actually seeing some really good benefits in terms of cardiovascular health just by doing that.
I like it. Jess.
So Joe Ellen wants to know, and you touched on it, but what can the over 70 crowd do? Does marching in place really help? What about those who just can't get out as much as some of the others?
Yeah, Dr. Chikizek, I see you shaking your head yes. Talk to us about the over 70 crowd. I'm going to tune in. I'm getting close. So.
Yeah, we did a few studies on this, and I know there's some others that are going on where we had the over 70 crowd, and we actually developed very specific home videos for folks to do. They can get up and move in place, get up and move during commercials while they're watching television. The other thing I think that's really important for the over 70 crowd is it's not just about the movement, it's about all the other things that help with healthy aging. So, standing there and trying to balance on your leg, doing some things that are going to cause some resistance on the upper, taking cans of soup or bottles of water and lifting them up, over your head and things. These are the kind of things that people can do while in their house, but it's, again, not just sitting in the chair all day, getting up, moving around, even if it's for 30 seconds, a minute at a time, and just doing that as much as you possibly can, I think would be very, very helpful for the elderly.
All right, Jess.
And Angela, speaking of getting older, question from Yen Liang. Does exercise help prevent hearing loss or getting hearing loss as you age? Could that help?
I've not, guys, team, I've not heard about the hearing loss question.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
That is a great question.
It is.
All right, we'll have to ask one of our ENT people that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too. I mean, maybe it just speaks to overall good health, but I had to ask. So, hold on, there were really good ones today. Question: any advice on what kind of fitness tracker to go towards? Any advice there?
Okay.
I can talk about that one
Dr.
a little
Tomey.
bit. Yeah. So it really depends on what metrics are really important for you. So we've already kind of talked about there's a difference between steps and minutes. So for example, if you just get a basic Fitbit that only gives you steps, and you're a person who's going to do more biking and elliptical, maybe doing some high intensity interval training, that's not going to pick it up, and so it might be discouraging to you. So you might want to instead look for a fitness tracker that can also provide you minutes, or can also track your heart rate and provide you with calorie burn, or whatever number may be more motivating to you. That said, if having all of that data available is too much information to you and you just want a simple number, then you might want to go back to something that just provides steps. And so there's a whole number of fitness trackers available that can look at heart rate, minutes, sleep, steps, and so it's kind of determining which factors are most important to you. The other thing we were talking about is sometimes people get really hung up on the fitness trackers. So it's that idea of like, if I take a walk without my fitness tracker, did I actually take a walk? Or I was saying, I think the first time I got a Fitbit, I was ended up pacing my house at night because I had to get up to my 10,000 steps, and that's just not realistic or healthy for a lot of people. So some people might benefit from not having a fitness tracker and actually just listening to their body or working on trying to get their steps their own way.
I'm just a little OCD sometimes. Sometimes when I get close to 10,000, I might sit there and just kind of move my arm like this to try and get my extra 1,000 instead of getting up and just moving 1,000 steps, which I could have done.
I think one of my favorite stories, we had a person in our weight management clinic who one time on Thanksgiving was so happy he got 12,000 steps, and he goes, didn't even do a whole lot that day. I sat there carving the turkey for a while, and we realized that just by carving the turkey, he was racking up the steps, and so he was bragging.
All right.
Look what I got on Thanksgiving.
We call that the turkey trot, don't we? Okay, Jess, we're back to you on that one.
Steve wants to know, well, on that note, how many calories does 10,000 steps a day burn, approximately?
Okay, who's going to handle it?
I can do that one too. So this is kind of a tricky number because it really depends on what your weight is, what your body mass is, what the intensity of physical activity you're doing is, so how hard, how intense versus how light. But on average, they estimate for the average person that they burn about 100 calories per mile walked. And so we know 10,000 steps is about 5 miles, so it's 4 to 5 miles, so it's going to be about 400 to 500 calories. So it's not a huge number, but you have to remember that walking is way more about burning calories and weight loss and weight maintenance. It's really about all the other health benefits, and that's what makes it so important.
I think that's one of the keys. For a long time we said if you exercise a lot, you're going to lose a lot of weight, and what we've learned is it's really what you eat that dictates how your weight is, and exercise dictates your health. And of course, those two things go to work together.
And exercise does have a place. We have seen that if you do very high amounts of exercise at high intensity, you can lose weight from exercise alone. But that's really hard to do. And exercise maybe has a bigger role in weight maintenance rather than weight loss. And so that's kind of where the new research is really starting to go.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, Jess.
Just a couple more questions. Lisa says she can only get in about 3,000 steps a day due to physical limitations, but is that still helpful? How helpful is that getting towards a healthier lifestyle?
Dr. Chikizek, I bet it is. And you're sitting around all that equipment. There's all sorts of ways to get exercise.
Yeah, there absolutely are. And if she's getting 3,000 steps a day, that's better than getting 2,000 steps a day. And if she's at 3,000 steps a day and there's some way she can get that to 3,500 steps a day, that's even better. So, doing something is better than doing nothing, but to continue to have improved health benefits, trying to add a little bit to that would be very helpful, but it doesn't have to be a lot that you add to that in order to start to experience more and more health benefits. So 3,000 is better than getting less than 3,000 for sure.
And Dr. Billinger, if I added a little bit of a bar class or sit-ups or whatever else to that, that's going to help that.
That is going to help that for sure. And again, we want our viewers to be encouraged by getting their steps in. And again, as Dr. Chikizek said, anything is better than none. And if we can add just a little bit more in, there's always going to be that added benefit.
Yeah, that's that cool thing that it's steps plus minutes. Yep. It's all about that, about getting your arteries to be happier. Jess?
Okay, I'm going to end with, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to add on to Dr. Tomey's earlier statement about high-intensity interval training. you can also do intervals, like if you're out walking, you could intersperse some walking to that meeting, acting like you're late for that meeting, go back to walking normally, and that can be some type of interval exercise that has benefit too.
I walk with my wife. She likes to do that. I mean, I'm a little more of a saunter kind of guy, and she's like, let's go, let's go, let's go. I'm like, oh my God, really?
Stites, when you're walking fast to get down to the show, and you come blowing through the door.
Yeah, that's what I do, because I'm running late. I never do that.
You got some high speed going in. Okay, so Hawkinson doesn't feel left out. I'm going to end on a COVID question. So are you ready? Mm-hmm. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so Sharon wants to know what you think about the information on the Pfizer bivariant possibly having more of a chance of causing an adverse effect.
No.
Yeah. Dr. Stites and I had discussions about this. It's really unfortunate. We certainly don't want to pile on the CDC. They're doing a great job. This was a press release that was released in the evening of Friday before a long weekend. I think they have since walked that back. I believe there was a little signal blip in one of their real-time data collection services for the vaccine that showed that possibly. They have gone through other parts, other resource gathering applications. They haven't found that. They've really kind of walked that initial statement back. It is very unlikely that it causes stroke or increased risk of stroke in those over 65 is the latest message from the CDC. But we need to also continue to tell you that we have shown the data is very supportive of the fact that being updated with your booster, particularly if those high risk, i.e. the elderly, other people who are at risk, reduces your risk of hospitalization 3-fold and reduces your risk of death or severe disease 19-fold as well. So the benefits of these vaccines continue to mount and continue to be supported with the data. These other safety or adverse events, we are certainly watching. There needs to be transparency. There has been transparency, but right now it is certainly much more beneficial to be getting the vaccines, be updated with your vaccines, than it is with these possible side effects. And again, we've seen different talk of side effects or adverse events with different vaccines and different age groups, for instance, the myocarditis or those young males. But again, overall, the benefits clearly outweigh any risks of these vaccines.
All right. Awesome program this morning. This has been great. I think I've learned a ton. And I want to go ahead and go around the horn here and get some final thoughts. Dr. Billinger, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. I think the final thoughts and the take-home message that I would give is, something is better than nothing. Move as much as you can. Where you are and where you're starting is great, and if you can add just a little bit each day, that is outstanding.
That's great. All right. Dr. Tomey.
So I'm probably going to quote one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Mike Evans, and this is about sometimes telling people to get 10,000 steps or even 30 minutes a day of physical activity is a lot to ask. So I'm going to say, can we try to limit our sitting and sleeping to only 23.5 hours?
Yeah, there you go. I think we can, right? All right. Dr. Jakizi.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize one thing I said earlier, and that is, sit less, move more, and when you move, as much as possible, move as if you were going to be late for an event or a meeting or something. And I think if we could just all adopt that type of lifestyle, we're going to have many, many benefits.
All right, I like it. Doc Hawk?
Yeah, I like the last question. I think it's important. Unfortunately, it came, the news release came out on a Friday, so we didn't get to talk about it, but I think we definitely need to talk about it. Continuing transparency, we need to continue to evaluate and research and investigate these issues. But right now, the continued message is that the vaccines continue to provide much, much more benefit than any risk. Be updated with your booster. We know it can help reduce your chance of hospitalization and severe disease. And again, if you have symptoms, get tested early if it's positive. If you are a candidate, get on Paxlovid. That will be another thing to help reduce your risk of hospitalization and severe outcomes as well.
The bottom line here is that COVID is bad for you.
Yes.
Vaccination is good for you and helps prevent the bad of COVID. And even though our numbers are down, we still have the equivalent of 2 hospital units full of COVID patients. That's still a lot. and we would like to have 0 COVID patients. We can do a lot better if people are vaccinated, and the bivalent vaccines are enormously safe. The data is overwhelmingly clear about that. One more thought about exercise that I think is really important when we talk about live long and prosper. It's not just that you want to live a long time. You want to feel good about how you live. We haven't touched really on all the emotional and mental health benefits of exercise. We know that's real, and I know my wife kicks me out of the house to go exercise every time I'm grouchy because it helps, Jess.
You're never grouchy. I don't believe it. All right, thank you. I love this conversation today. I learned a lot as well. So, well, we want to thank all of you for being with us today. And tomorrow we're going to have an encore presentation of our morning medical update. And then we're going to be back Friday live at 8 o'clock with our next live morning medical update. So until then, have a great day, and we'll see you back here on Friday. This young mom who battled cervical cancer is now using her story to reach others about the importance of early detection. I'm Jessica Lovell. Coming up on the next Morning Medical Update, meet Erin Reyes and her doctor who explains why a radical hysterectomy was the best option for Erin. See you Friday at 8.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcasts. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.